Welcome to the Founder Experience, where we're charting the unpredictable waters of startup ventures. I'm Nathan Williams.
And I'm Alex Gutjahr.
Alex, have you ever gone to a restaurant where the waitress comes up to you or the waiter comes up to you and says, "What would you like to eat?" but they don't give you a menu?
I'm not sure. No, probably not.
It's exactly. Believe it or not, I went through a lot of situations where I was the restaurant doing exactly that,
Okay.
figuratively.
Mm-hmm.
So early on, early on in my current company, one of my co-founders and I went and approached a potential client. Now we have a system where you can take data and attach it to products. It's a traceability digital product passport system. It's a sort of a new concept. You take data, you put it on a product with a QR code, you can scan it. And we were so excited that we had, a live working platform, and we approached a fairly large, multi-billion-dollar corporation and said, "This is perfect for you. It's going to be great. The possibilities are endless. You can put any data you want on these products." And they sort of looked at us with confusion and weren't sure what to do. And in the end, we couldn't close the deal. And we were talking about it afterwards and realized that it was like going to a restaurant where they said, "We can serve you anything."
Yeah.
There is a mental load for making an intuitive leap between seeing an object, a product, and then seeing how to apply it, the possibilities. And that was a very big mental leap we asked our customers to make. But what I've seen in the past 8 years is that even small mental leaps are almost impossible for a customer to make. For example, if you've got a product that is meant for one thing, it is very rare that someone will take it and use it for something else. And we all know products that have done this, right? Like we all know, that Silly Putty was originally an adhesive that someone then said, "Hey, maybe we could turn it into a toy," or maybe someone. Like all of the big products had someone make that intuitive leap of what else could we do with this. But to get that coming from a customer is super, super rare. And so I guess the beginning of my story is, how have you dealt with this, where you've got a possibility in front of you and you've got to connect it to make sense for a customer without having them make the intuitive leap? Have you found that in your own business?
Yeah, I'd say this is this happens similar to what you said with novel technologies, right? I would assume ChatGPT or AI in general is a good example, right? Because you have unlimited possibilities, and
Mm-hmm.
you put it in front of people, and they'll be like, "Okay, can you rewrite my email?" Right? Which is like, okay, fair. So I think that may be an example. And then before I've worked in my ventures in the blockchain space. And before also we started out doing voice assistants. Google Home, Amazon Alexa back in the day. And I think this was also a technology that had and still has huge potential, because you can pretty much do anything that you want. But it was hard to convince companies because they can say, okay, but how are we going to use that? So the way we approach this is by coming up with very, very specific and narrow scenarios of how your product or solution helps solve one of their issues potentially, right? So we worked for a big publishing house in Germany, and they have some intellectual property, and we showed them, look, this is how we could leverage your intellectual property with voice technology, and how it could help you. But I think especially then you have to be laser focused on coming up with a scenario that the clients can relate to, right? They see, okay, immediately that makes sense. I think presenting them with something that can do everything is overwhelming. And I immediately wrote down another example, not AI, but for me it was Jira. I'm not sure what it is today, whether it's still a ticketing tool by Atlassian. I used, like, when I started my career in tech, it was the tool to manage agile projects. And then I feel like at some point it got so flexible and so big. I hated touching it because
Hmm.
I felt it was too much. It had so many potential. It could do all the things, but I wanted something simpler, because that was like, it's too much for me. So maybe that's a personal part to that story.
The number one thing that we all have to keep in mind is that we're ultimately making businesses to sell things to other humans. And humans have a human brain, and the human brain has limitations. The human brain does not like dealing with wide open spaces. It likes choice, but it likes limitations in choice. If I remember, I love your ChatGPT example because, first of all, the GPT model of the AI model had existed for like over a year before it caught on, and it only caught on when they added the chat function.
Hmm.
And what is the chat function? It's basically a limitation of the AI. They cut out being able to fine tune all of these different elements of the AI and just made it so that you can simply chat with it. And
Yeah.
then suddenly people could use it. And even then, when it was going wild, my friends came to me and said, "You got to check out this chat GPT." And I was like, "It's just another chatbot." And they're like, "No, no, it's so much more powerful." Yeah, okay. So it's more powerful as a chatbot. What am I going to do with it? And then I wasn't able to see just how much it could change different aspects until I saw examples of
Yeah.
how people were doing it. And I'm an innovator, right? Like I'm someone whose career is around taking technologies and finding different applications for them. And I had trouble making the mental leap until I started seeing how other people were doing it. And I had the same problem when I started with blockchain, right?
Hmm.
My dad was the one who came to me and said, "Nathan, you've got to check out Ethereum. It's going to change the world." And I said, "That's a blockchain. Isn't that just how you buy drugs on the internet?" Right? Like, what else are you going to do with it? Like, and but when you start to see the different possibilities of how it actually works and what you can apply it for, then you can start to make that mental leap. But the thing is, your customers are never going to do that because your customers are focused on their own business.
Yeah.
They're not focused on seeing what else could I do to work on my business, because your customers, by and large, are working for their businesses. They're not working on their businesses. They're not being the innovators necessarily, unless by some coincidence you're selling to other innovators. Um, but even then, you need a menu to choose from. You need and the more that your customers are not technology people or involved directly with technology, the more you have to spell everything out for them.
Yeah.
I deal with mining and metals companies a lot, and if I give an example of of a successful implementation of my software at a tin mine, but I use it as an example in a copper mine, their first question is, well, can you use it with copper? They don't even know, right? Like in my mind, of course it makes sense. It's metal, right? But in their mind, they're not sure because there are specific things in their industry that they're used to. And making that mental leap, oh, you did this with tin and you could do it over here with copper.
Hmm.
You can't expect customers to make that leap for you.
Yeah. I think that's really important, like a really important realization. So first of all, I want to say, my parents talking to me about blockchain is one of the tipping points for mass adoption. I haven't reached that point yet, you're much further ahead. Um, but the other thing is that I just realized is also having examples or case studies, right? That's why it's important, because if you're targeting a specific industry, and you want to win over a client with something that has so much potential, you can also reference existing case studies, other customers. We say, look, this is one of your competitors or someone closely related to what you're doing, and this is how they have used our solution to achieve X, Y, Z, and X, Y, Z being something that your client cares about, right? Whether that's more revenue, time saved, etc. So I think this is also powerful to come up with with a shelf of examples that you can then just pick and show clients, because that helps steer their imagination of what it could look like for them specifically as well.
One of the big challenges being a technology company that serves non-technology companies is being able to understand your customer well enough to make that bridge that mental gap,
Mhm.
right? So, for example, if you are a software company for healthcare, but you've never worked in healthcare, then it's going to be a big challenge to know like who does the purchasing, who does the using of it, who makes the approvals, who's like how does this industry actually work on a nitty gritty level. And one way that companies overcome this and founders can overcome this is actually working in the industry, taking a job, working in these places and seeing what the existing system looks like and seeing how to fix it. That's why so many successful companies, even if they're not multi-billion dollar companies, they're just successful small companies, start with people who've worked for 20 years in the industry. Yeah, I mean, the average age of a first-time founder is in their 40s, and I remember this was a big controversy because a lot of in the startup community, because a lot of people assumed it was younger because, you have the iconoclasts like Mark Zuckerberg and who
Hmm.
started very young and were very successful and then had a movie made about them. But the average age is, in their 40, I think it's 45. And the reason is because a 20-year-old coming out of university or high school might have the availability of time, and they might have the drive and interest in doing entrepreneurial adventures, but they don't have any experience in the industry, so they'll pick a very general subject, usually something that they have experience with, like a social network or selling something online, e-commerce maybe. But it's very difficult to access existing industries and go for bigger clients if you don't understand them at all. And making that mental leap, there's a double challenge there, of course, is that making that mental leap is difficult as well if you're so steeped in the industry that you don't see a way to improve it. Right. And so this is the other danger that happens, is that if you've been in the industry long enough, you know how it works, but you don't know enough about it, about being an outsider to be able to bring two worlds together and then change or fix a big problem in the industry. So that's the
To
challenge.
But to what extent do you think this is something that a founder has to do, as opposed to hiring an account manager? Because I've just been thinking, even if you don't have the industry experience, but you want to start in an industry that you consider worthwhile, then you could still bring someone in who knows the industry, right? And another thought I had is on culture, right? Because industry is one aspect, but then culture may be different. I've been thinking about if you have clients in Asia, for example, then maybe different to, we're diving into selling it here already, but it's I just thought, does it make sense to bring in someone early versus doing it yourself as the founder? Is that have you ever hired someone specifically for a specific industry or culture?
I've tried and it didn't work. Has it ever worked for you?
I've never had the situation where I hired someone specifically. That's yeah. So far, I've always done it myself, which is limited in terms of how well it can scale.
This is the problem, right? Like I've tried it a couple of times. And the first challenge you run into is evaluating whether someone is good or not.
Mhm.
Um, because people, especially in really big companies, I find that people who succeed in really big companies, at least to get to sort of a middle management level, um, you can succeed in a big company to get to a middle management level without being very good at your job, right? You can sort of talk very well and then give work to people who are working for you that are better at actually doing the work than you are, but maybe not as good at selling it. And so it can be a challenge to know if the person really understands the industry and if they can bring in that knowledge because you don't have anything to evaluate it against. The second thing is that your business then really depends on this account manager, right?
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
an old saying that if you want to decide whether you should outsource part of your business or whether you should keep it in house, the question is, how core is it to your business? The more core it is, the more you should bring it in house. Well, if you're the founder, even hiring someone is not necessarily having it in house. Having a co founder that you truly trust makes it in house, I guess, or
Mhm.
knowing it yourself makes it in house. But why should you be the founder of the business if you don't have the core knowledge needed to make the business succeed? Yeah, I mean, it's different as an agency, right? Because as an agency, you get this knowledge, right? People will tell you, I want to build this, I want to build that. Here's the situation. I need someone to do this. Agency business is different.
Mhm.
But if I'm going out and selling a product or something to one of these businesses, not as an agency, then I've got to do all of these plans in advance and say, well, look, I've planned out for all of those mental leaps you're going to have to make. And this is what it does, and this is how it fits into your business. And it should be good enough to go that you're not going to be sitting there thinking, oh, well, do they really understand how this works?
But what do you think is the best approach to helping clients see a potential future with a product? Is it because in my mind that comes down to at least having some sort of workshop or meeting where we sit together and discuss this in person versus just sending them a slide deck or anything else. I would assume that it always come because I haven't tried it any other way than to just be present with the client, sit together with them, and then just really brainstorm, come up with ideas, and then kind of take them by the hand and then show them, look, this is what it could look like. Or what's the best approach that you found for MindSpider?
No, I completely agree with you. And I do the exact same thing. The question is, how do you get to that workshop? How do you get to the point where they trust you enough to do that workshop with you? Because at that point, they're already committed, right? At that point, they're blocking off a couple of hours, giving you access to a lot of sensitive information, uh, probably with multiple people. And probably you won't want to commit that amount of time unless you're pretty sure that they're going to close as well. You don't want them to take all your knowledge and then move off somewhere else. Um, so a lot of it, I think, is getting enough background understanding that you can get to that point with the customer.
Yeah, and also what's the intent of the customer? So for the example that you gave initially for the client, that they already knew that they need a specific solution and you were just one company to pitch their solution, or was it just reaching out cold and then saying, okay, this is you don't know that you need it just yet. We just show you a better way of managing what you're doing already, or what was the how knowledgeable was the client at this point about the solution?
Yeah, I mean, with the story I told at the beginning, they weren't knowledgeable at all, right?
Okay.
And usually when I meet clients today, they'll have an idea of what they want, and my first question is how knowledgeable are you about this, right? Because it's always a challenge when you're dealing, especially with a novel technology or something new. They might have ideas that are right or wrong, and sort of knowing where they stand is quite important. And for us, it works very well that we understand our software and our business. What is always a challenge is knowing specific clients and how it relates to their business and making sure you overcome these mental leaps, right? That's one of the reasons why, knowing your ideal customer profile, going after companies in a certain vertical, we haven't gone after, for example, agricultural companies
Hmm.
and or healthcare companies, even though they might need the same product, because it's a very different ideal customer profile. They've got different processes, they've got different jargon, and
Yeah.
making that mental leap for this is how I would apply it in this scenario and how people would use it is a challenge. And one of the biggest ones is often I'll talk to companies where there are people that understand how this works and how it applies, but then they have to explain it to their bosses who have no idea.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's another way where you need to be able to overcome that mental leap that they have to make.
How important do you think is it for a client to see that you are somewhat like an industry expert. I've just been thinking, as we discussed, when it helps if you have industry experience or knowledge. But I I always found it hard to sell to clients whose industry I didn't knew exactly, and I think this is also something that is objection for many clients. So when we started especially for the voice business, we had many publishing houses, right? Eventually, we landed a few clients there. But initially, I knew nothing about this, right? Just being a consumer of papers and series and whatnot is not the same as knowing how a publisher actually works. So, like I've always felt it's kind of a disadvantage. Of course, we then try to improve and get that knowledge, but initially, when we started, I felt like this is when people or potential clients see that you don't have the industry experience, that can be quite a big blocker for them to even continue.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it really depends on whether you communicate that you understand their pain points or not, right? If you, because no one will work with you just because they want to work with you. They'll work with you because they've got a pain and you solve it, right? And generally, like I heard someone say this a long time ago, and it rings like a bell in my head. Is that if you have a problem with your knee, would you rather go to a doctor or a knee doctor? Probably a knee doctor.
Yeah.
And if you've got if you've got a pain in your arm, right? You don't want someone to give you the arm hurt medicine. You want someone to diagnose why you have a pain in your arm, and
Yeah.
they might not know
Understand.
everything, but they at least know what questions to ask,
Yeah.
so that you can say, okay, do we need some to repair the joint? Do we need to heal a bruise? Do we just need to give painkillers? Like what do you need to do? Same thing for a company pain. Now we've been talking here about mental leaps for B2B businesses, but it applies to B2C as well, right? I'll give you an example. Like I like using my wife's business a lot because she deals with
Mhm.
Lego style bricks. Did you know that Duplo, the big ones that little kids use, can fit on Lego base plates that they can connect together?
They do. I thought
Yes,
it's a different structure.
it is 2 times the size of Lego, and a Duplo block will fit on a Lego block. And you didn't even know. And
No, I didn't.
exactly. No one does. And even though it's sort of the way it was designed. And so you often will get parents asking, like, are you going to come up with a Duplo one? And, or one that will be compatible with the Duplo style blocks.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you would never make that mental leap because you don't have the knowledge to do it,
True.
right? That you can actually just use them together. So, and and this is very, very common among all consumer products, that like you might, if you go wide enough and you have a big enough user base, if you have 100,000, 200,000 units sold and 200,000 people using your product, yes, you will find a few people that start a community that will use your product in a different and innovative way, and you can learn from that. But it is very rare. And so
Yeah.
and so it is much more common that you as the company need to start thinking in what other ways could people use this, and make that mental leap for people if you want to push in that direction.
That's it for this episode of The Founder Experience. If you enjoyed it, do us a favor, hit subscribe wherever you are listening, whether that's Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. If you've got a second, leave a rating or a review. It really helps. And you can find more episodes and behind the scenes stuff on our website, founderexperience.fm. And if you've got feedback or business ideas that you want us to talk about, shoot us a message at hello@founderexperience.fm. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you next time.